You're listening to Protecting What Matters by the Ohio Department of Commerce. Commerce is Ohio's chief regulator, and we play a vital role in keeping you safe by protecting your property, your money, and some of the products you use every day. This is designed to bring awareness to important issues and help educate consumers and businesses. Join us as we chat with trusted industry experts focused on providing you with the tools you need to help you protect what matters most in your life.
This bureau is very important because of the things that you don't see. You go into a gas station and you may not know why it is important for, or even think about why the tanks that you are literally walking over top of are important for us to regulate because of the contents of those. When you go to enjoy a fireworks show, you go there to have fun and to you may not even be thinking about safety first, but because the State Fire Marshal's Office and the Department of Commerce is, you don't have to worry about that.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Protecting What Matters. I'm your host, Andy Ellinger, and today we're going to discuss the State Fire Marshal's Bureau of Testing and Registration, how it impacts your community, and the safety of all Ohioans. Joining me today is Denitra Butler, Bureau Chief for the Division of State Fire Marshal Bureau of Testing and Registration. How are you doing today, Denitra?
I'm doing well, thank you.
We are taking a look behind the scenes of the Bureau of Testing and Registration. This bureau, a key part of our state's Department of Commerce and the Division of State Fire Marshal, might seem complex with its myriad of licensing processes and safety regulations. But we're here to assure you it's far more accessible than you might think. Denitra, what is the Testing and Registration Bureau within the Division of State Fire Marshal?
So the Testing and Registration Bureau is what the title describes. Testing refers to the testing that we do for certain licenses that we issue. Registrations refers to the various credentials that we issue. We issue registrations, certifications, licenses, and permits across 5 different industries with over 20 different license types.
Yeah, we're going to dig into some of those industries. How does the Bureau issue licensing credentials for something like the fire protection individuals and the fire protection companies, and what are they?
Absolutely. So fire protection is one of the 5 industries that we regulate. So that's a great place to start. Fire protection individuals, we license the individuals, the provisional assistants who help in an apprenticeship capacity to the individuals, and we also license the companies. So the licenses that we issue to fire protection individuals involve 10 different categories. I won't name them all, but it varies from fire alarm detection to fire service mains to fire pumps to underground type of fire protection systems, and so on and so forth. And the fire protection companies are the companies where these fire protection installers work.
Yeah, so these are life critical installations happening. So it's incredibly important that these folks be credentialed and licensed because of the important work they're doing that will save someone's life down the road.
Absolutely. What the fire protection individuals do is they install firefighting equipment and fire protection equipment. They service it, repair it, install it. They do all of those things. That's what a fire protection installer will do.
Very important. I did not realize that they needed, but it does make sense that they would need licenses, very much so. What about when we're talking about hotels and motels? Well, what a shift that is. It's a whole different category now. We're talking about hotels and motels and licensing credentials that you provide. And these credentials, if you provide these to these licensed entities, then they display those to show these credentials, I'm guessing.
Absolutely. So hotels is the second of the 5 industries that we regulate. We mentioned fire protection. Hotels is another. The other 3, just by the way, are fireworks, underground storage tank installation, and cigarettes. So back to hotels. The license requirements for hotels vary based on one of the type of hotel license that they are issued, whether or not they are going for a license that allows the customers to stay for no more than 30 days, or whether they're going for an extended license that allows them to stay for more than 30 days. There are certain specifications that they have to have according to the fire code, and that's where code enforcement comes in and checks those things out in order for them to have a license that allows their customers to stay for no more than 30 days versus that extended stay credential that allows them to stay for more than 30 days. So the criteria that they have to follow for hotel licensure is a large part having to do with the Code Enforcement Bureau. Code enforcement will go out and make sure that this location meets the requirements according to the fire code for the life safety and the fire safety specifications that the building must have. They must have a clear code inspection, a clear what they call a life safety inspection in order to have that license issued. And that license does need to be kept in the office where that hotel is, and it needs to be either kept in the office and produced for fire officials when they ask for it, or they can just prominently display it conspicuously in a way that the public could see it.
So is there a huge difference between the criteria that you expect from a less than 30-day hotel and an extended stay hotel? Is it a huge difference?
So the difference would be what the occupancy requirements are on the certificate of occupancy. And that's where code enforcement comes in. They have to provide us with that occupancy, and code enforcement gets into the different types of occupancy codes that are required.
Okay. Now we get into fireworks. Fireworks got a little more complicated recently with legalization for a lot of fireworks throughout Ohio. So there's a lot of different areas of fireworks where you're involved. Can you explain the process for fireworks exhibitors and assistants to obtain that license?
Absolutely. So in the fireworks licensure category, the exhibitor and the assistant, those are the licenses we issue to individuals. So those are the occupational licenses. And the process that an exhibitor must go through to obtain a license is a background check. That's whether they're an assistant or the actual exhibitor. They must also provide a proficiency letter, an endorsement letter from another licensed exhibitor, from an actual licensed Ohio exhibitor, I shouldn't say another, but from their supervising licensed exhibitor. And this letter of proficiency must show that this licensed exhibitor endorses this applicant, saying that they have been proven to be proficient in the safe display and exhibition of fireworks. So they have to have that endorsement letter and that background check. And then they can apply to take the exam, and then they still must pass the exam. There are 3 types of fireworks exhibitor licenses. There are the fireworks, which just means you can go and shoot a show outdoors. There's pyrotechnics, which means you can go, and that could combine, that means you're doing the stuff like at the Cleveland Cavaliers stadium. And also there's the 3rd type, which is flame effects. So that's more things you may see at a stage play or something, or even at a concert.
Yeah, these are the big boys then, the really huge explosions, and that regular Ohioans cannot do these.
Regular Ohioans cannot.
No. So, okay, that's the stuff that you want to see in the hands of professionals for sure.
Yes, and thankfully it's required by law for that to be so.
It's your money, come and claim it. The Ohio Department of Commerce Division of Unclaimed Funds is currently safeguarding more than $3 billion in unclaimed funds. So there's a good chance you or someone you know has money waiting to be claimed. Just head over to our website, unclaimedfunds.ohio.gov, to search your name, the name of a family member, or a loved one to see if you have an unclaimed fund.
Thanks for listening to Protecting What Matters from the Ohio Department of Commerce. We are your resource for all safety information for your home or business. Here's a quick safety message reminder from the Ohio State Fire Marshal's office.
So smoke alarms, we want to make sure we're putting those on each level of the house. Each bedroom that you're at, where anybody sleeps, put that inside that bedroom, and then outside where the people sleep. They're important because what you typically have is that early activation, early notification of something happening, in this case smoke building up, and that usually is what tells you that there's a fire happening. So having those placed in those locations that are appropriate, making sure that you're checking the alarms themselves about once a month just to make sure that they're working, change the batteries on them, we like to say twice a year right now, and then after 10 years, those entire alarms are going to need replaced.
For more information on the State Fire Marshal, visit our website at com.ohio.gov/fire. And be sure to check out some of our previous podcast episodes on all podcast platforms. We're back with Protecting What Matters. I'm your host, Andy Ellinger, and we are here with Denitra Butler, Bureau Chief for the Division of State Fire Marshal Testing and Registration Bureau. Now we're going to shift gears and talk a little bit about underground storage tanks. What are the standards, Denitra, for licensing an underground storage tank, an underground storage tank installer, an underground storage tank inspector? Seems to be a lot, doesn't it? I'm throwing at you.
And it is. So underground storage tanks themselves, and I may say USTs, but that's
Gotcha.
what I'm referring to. So the underground storage tank facilities, which are going to be at gas stations, airports, colleges, universities, could be a parcel, a location that has a lot of shipments that go on. So any of those types of facilities are types of underground storage tank facilities that we license. We license around 7,200 facilities, and there are a total of over 20,000 tanks amongst those 7,200 facilities. And so an underground storage tank facility must first come to us with a permit request. So they must come to us saying, hey, we're going to be installing tanks at this location, and we're requesting a permit to do so. So that brings in our permitting process. So a permit is actually what starts the beginning of an underground storage tank facility. They're requesting a permit to install the tanks underground and open that facility, that location, that gas station, or whatever type of facility that it is. And so once a facility is open, they must continue to submit permits for any work that needs to be done on those tanks, whether it's repairing of the tanks, whether they're installing an additional tank, whether they're removing a tank for any reason, whether there's a need to close a tank that they have at their facility. These tanks are subject to inspection. They are inspected upon that permit. When a permit is submitted, most of the permits that are submitted, they are reviewed by our Bureau of Underground Storage Tank Regulation. And so we partner with them as well in that permit process. We are the start of the permit process. The permit finishes in the Bureau of Underground Storage Tank Regulation. Those permits I mentioned to install tanks at a facility or to do any of the various permit types, the types of work, which again could be modifications to the system, parts of the tank where there are repairs. And so that's all the permitting process for underground storage tank regulation. And we work with Buster for that. And when I say Buster, I'm talking about the Bureau of Underground Storage Tank Regulation. And so that's the permitting process. Those facilities are also required to renew. They are issued a registration every year. So they receive an annual registration, and then they must renew that registration every year with us. They are also subject, once they get those inspections done for the initial installation, they are also inspected every 3 years by the Buster Bureau, and then they're inspected at any time that there's a permit that's submitted for any work that needs done on that tank. So that is an overview of the underground storage tank facilities.
Which you said there's 20,000 plus in Ohio. Ohio.
More than 20,000 tanks, right,
Tanks.
are underground in Ohio.
And then those things are going to be holding liquids like gasoline, diesel, fuel, and that's why it's so critical that they be properly installed, properly maintained, because we don't want that stuff leaking into your groundwater.
Thank you. I almost missed the obvious, which is
Yeah.
what do these tanks contain?
Yeah.
And so, yes, they contain fuel for the most part. And if there's a change in the fuel that is being stored, if they're going to go from diesel to unleaded or something like that, they tell us that too through they notify us as well of that change. We need to know, our office needs to know, Buster needs to know what are the contents within that tank. We need to know, is the tank still underground? We need to pretty much regulate that tank as long as it is underground. Until it is removed and comes out, it has to be under regulation by the state fire marshal's office, as long as it is meeting the requirements for what a regulated tank is, which is going to be based on the substance. Something like heating oil for a home, that's not regulated by. So we regulate the tanks themselves, we regulate the installers who do the work on the tanks, and we regulate the inspectors who look after the installers.
All along every process.
Yes. And so the installers are the ones who are doing the work. So when that permit is submitted saying, oh, hey, I need to install new tanks at this facility, or I need to do some repair work at a facility, that's an underground storage tank installer that is doing that installation or that repair work. An underground storage tank installer, the requirements that they have for us are that they also have to pass an exam. They also have to either have completed 36 hours of education and provided some samples of permit work that they have done, or they have to be an engineer.
Wow.
Then they go and take the exam. It is a 2-part exam that covers OAC rules, Ohio Administrative Code rules, and also standards that have to do with underground storage tanks. Now, the underground storage tank inspector, they have to first know the installer work. So they have to go through the classes. They either have to be a licensed installer, and then they can come to be an inspector, or they at least have to have taken that 36-hour course that an installer has to have taken. And they also must pass an exam as well. And they have their coursework is longer than an installer because it includes the installer coursework and additional coursework that's required for an inspector. So they have, as you might imagine, more education and training that's required above the installers because they're looking at their work. And there's also a background check requirement for underground storage tank inspectors as well. So there's just a higher level of expectation and licensing that's required for those underground storage tank inspectors. They pretty much are signing off on the work that's being done at these facilities. That's their sign off is what's closing a permit that's been opened to install or repair or modify these tanks. So that's why they have that higher level of responsibility to become for their license.
Yep, very, very critical, and probably a lot of environmental backgrounds and things as well, because you never know what's going to happen with these underground storage tanks. Yeah.
Absolutely. Buster would tell you all about how they work with the EPA. We don't do that in the Testing and Registration Bureau,
Right.
but that is what Buster does as a part of, once it's in the ground, Buster handles all of that. So they work with the federal EPA and a number of other government agencies and state agencies.
We've touched on some of the big areas that testing and registration deals with from a licensing standpoint and certification and all that. Once these have been granted, they need to be renewed, I'm assuming. At least some of them probably do. So can you tell, like in broad strokes, what kind of criteria do you have that this person who's going through these stringent areas to get their certification can get this license renewed on a regular basis?
So as you can imagine, across 5 industries
Yeah.
with 20 different license types, the renewal requirements, they vary.
Yeah.
What the basis is for most all of them, no, for all of them, is a fee. So they have to pay a fee and they have to submit some type of renewal document, something where they have signed and verified that the information we have about them is still the same and nothing has changed. So they still will have to certify to that. Some of the licenses have a continuing education component. Some of them have a background check requirement still. They had to get that to obtain the license. And fireworks, I'll give as the best example for that. They must continue to get a background check every 36 months while they have that license. And the underground storage tank inspector, they're also required to get that that state background check
Gotcha.
throughout their license period. So it does vary, but there are education requirements that will carry through for their license for some of them.
What are the penalties for operating without a license in any of these categories? It probably varies again, I would guess, but there are penalties, I'm assuming.
Absolutely. So the penalties, as you said, they vary based on the license type, and those penalties would involve other bureaus. So we're the ones who administer the license and make sure that we do what we can to keep
Yes.
you licensed. And then if it gets to the point where there is any violation, that is typically going to involve the Code Enforcement Bureau or FEIB, which is the Fire Explosives and Investigations Bureau. Could also involve Buster. Well, it definitely will involve Buster if it's one of those underground storage tank related credentials that we talked about. So when it gets to penalties or anything like that, we're talking pulling in another bureau and our legal section as well.
So in all these areas intrigue someone who's listening and they want to learn more, can we provide any resources or guides to help with the application process for them to start down the road to get licensed for one of these areas?
Our website is a great resource. All of our applications are on our website. The applications include very detailed instructions that tell you everything that you need to become licensed. So we always recommend that people check that out first. The applications and the resources there will most likely answer all of the questions that you would have about how to obtain any of the licenses that we issue.
This sounds like it's ever changing. Like we were talking earlier about fireworks being newly licensed to be allowed in Ohio. What sort of updates or changes do you anticipate in these processes or requirements in the near future?
So we are making some changes in our the databases that we use, that we are going to continue to communicate to our stakeholders about. One of the big changes that's coming up is the underground storage tank database replacement. And so that is something we're doing jointly, of course, with Buster, the Bureau of Underground Storage Tank Regulation. And so that is a huge change for us. We're going to have a nice shiny new system that will allow a lot more interaction for the customer. The customer will be able to do a lot of things that they could not do themselves. So it will have a lot more self-service features. So we're really excited about that upgraded database that we expect to happen in the next 12 months or so. And also for the Testing and Registration Bureau, we plan to begin working on allowing the online submission of initial applications. Right now, renewals are done online, which is great, but we don't have the ability for any of our licensed applicants to apply online for initial licensure. But we are working toward that, and we're going to start that in 2024 for our occupational licenses.
Okay.
Yes.
I think Ohioans listening have a good sense of how mission critical it is for testing and registration, but kind of remind the regular Ohioans listening why this bureau is so important to them.
This bureau is very important because of the things that you don't see. You go into a gas station and you may not know why it is important for, or even think about why the tanks that you are literally walking over top of are important for us to regulate because of the contents of those. When you go to enjoy a fireworks show, you go there to have fun and to you may not even be thinking about safety first, but because the State Fire Marshal's Office and the Department of Commerce is, you don't have to worry about that, so that you can know that you can go to that show and enjoy it. And behind the scenes, there are licensed exhibitors who obtained the product from a licensed wholesaler or manufacturer, and that product was delivered at the time that it was allowed to be within the law. So these are things so it's the behind the scene things. You don't think when you go into a hotel, oh wow, is this a fire code compliant wall here, but because you're there and enjoying the comfort, you don't have to worry about that, because you have the State Fire Marshal's Office working behind the scenes with this licensed hotel, so you can know that code enforcement has visited this hotel. They have checked to see if they have complied with the requirements for this building. When you go into that building, well, I wonder if this sprinkler system was installed by someone who's licensed. You don't have to worry about that because that's what we're doing behind the scenes. It's making sure that a licensed fire protection installer was the one who installed that sprinkler system and the fire alarm detection system that you hope you never have to hear, but that you want to work if it's needed.
That's great. We talked a lot about a lot of different areas. Did I miss anything? Is there anything else we should discuss around this topic today?
I would just emphasize that if anyone wants to check the validity of a license in real time, you can do that right on our e-license lookup. And for underground storage tanks, you want to look for the word OTTR. That is the database to look up the actual facilities. Underground storage tank facilities only. So you can go there and find out at any time, is this facility licensed? If not, if you don't know where to start on how to report unlicensed activity or a complaint, you can call the State Fire Marshal's Office and you will be directed the right way. You can call the Testing and Registration Bureau and we will direct you to the right way on who needs to hear about the complaint that you have on any unlicensed activity or any shoddy work that's done by someone who is licensed.
I would like to thank Denitra Butler, the Bureau Chief for the Division of State Fire Marshal Testing and Registration, for joining me today. Thank you so much for your time today on this critically important issue.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Andy.
Whether you're a business owner seeking certification or an everyday Ohioan curious about how safety standards are upheld in our state, the Bureau of Testing and Registration is your go-to resource. With a commitment to transparency, efficiency, and above all, the safety of Ohioans, the Bureau works tirelessly to make its services easily understandable and reachable for all. For more information on the Division of State Fire Marshal's Testing and Registration Bureau, visit our website, com.ohio.gov/fire.